Welcome to JVR Industries. Today we're going to go over the long-awaited comparison of the Vac110 and the VP215. The JVR Vac110 is JVR Industries model, whereas this is VacMaster. So we're going to go over the subtle differences, major differences, basic operations, all that good stuff. Before we get into that though, I want to quickly cover our VacOil line. These have all been quality tested commercially for 25 years, and they're USA sourced and refined. Not something you find too frequently in this industry, so we're pretty proud of that. So you have 22 weight oils, 46 weight oils, all the way up to R580 synthetic oil equivalent, and the pricing is extremely competitive, and you have a whole slew of oils for whatever application. Now the 22 oil is the most common in all the JVR Vac series units. There is one unit that does use the 46 oil. So go check that out, check the pricing, extremely competitive. If you're using a VP215, you could even use our 22 weight oil and you'd be running phenomenally. So feel free to give us a call with any questions on that. So let's get back to this big comparison. Stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. I'm going to quickly go over unit specifications on both of these units. JVR Vac110 measures in at 14.7 inches by 19.8 inches by 16 inches in height. With the lid open, the JVR Vac110 is 25.5 inches tall. The VacMaster VP215 measures in at 14 inches by 20 inches by 15 inches. And with the lid open, it measures in at 28.5 inches in height. Now, one thing to consider on these two units is these lids automatically open. So the height with the lid open is quite vital to storage and how you're going to be keeping it. So keep in mind that these units probably would not fit under a cupboard in most instances. So you'd probably want to find a nice stainless steel cart or table that's like out in the garage or basement, somewhere not in your kitchen, most likely, depending on your kitchen setup. So let's go into the chamber dimensions on these two units. The Vac110 measures in at 11.3 inches by 15.2 inches by 5.2 inches, and that's width, depth, and height. Let's move forward to the VacMaster VP215. The chamber dimensions are 11.3 inches by 15.5 inches by 4.75 inches to 5.25 inches. And the reason why this one has a range on the height in the chamber is because the chamber itself has a tapered base, as opposed to the JVR Vac110, where the chamber is one flat base, meaning the chamber height is consistently the same height across the whole chamber. Now you might be asking yourself, what does this mean regarding the different chamber heights? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to cover this later in the video, as there's a couple other components paired with the chamber size that will actually have an effect on your vacuum cycle times. So let's cover that later. Well, since we're discussing chamber size, we may as well go into chamber composition, or what is this chamber made out of? Well, both chambers are made out of stainless steel. One is molded, that's the VP215, and the Vac110 has a reinforced stainless steel chamber. So subtle differences, nothing major. So now that we're done discussing chamber size, chamber composition, we may as well go into the seal bar length on both of these units. The JVR Vac110 has an 11-inch seal bar, and the VP215 has a 10.25 inch steel bar. This essentially means that width is the max width of a pouch that you can fit inside the unit. So on a Vac110, you'll be able to fit an 11-inch wide pouch. And on the VP215, you'll be able to fit a 10.25-inch wide pouch. Now, those don't really exist, so you'll have to bump it down to 10 inches. Now, this leads into the next subject, which is maximum pouch size. JVR Industries recommends a maximum pouch size of 11 by 16 inches on this unit when considering high-profile products. So keep that in mind. As far as the VacMaster's VP215, VacMaster recommends a maximum pouch size of a 10 by 13. When we looked at it, we thought these guys could easily fit a 10 by 16 pouch in here if you're dealing with high profile product. So you are able to fit a little bit of a bigger pouch in there. Something to bear in mind. It's kind of cool. In the heart of every seal bar assembly is called a seal wire, or alternatively known as a heat strip. This heat strip is what is producing that high temperature to seal off your chamber vacuum pouches, and in some cases, retort pouches and mylar bags. Now, in the JVR Vac110, that heat strip that runs down the center or the heart of the seal bar assembly is 8 millimeters in width, and it's a single heat strip. Now on the VP215, there is a heat strip that is 3 millimeters wide, but there's two of them. So they have dual or twin 3 millimeter heat strips or seal wires in the heart of the seal bar assembly on these two. So this one has 2 millimeters greater heat strip width overall. So a common question that we get regarding the JVR Vac110 at least, and sometimes the VP215, is, are these units retort capable? Well, some of you might be wondering, what is retort capability? I'm going to quickly go over what that implies. It means that you can seal up the 7mm Mylar, which is used for like freeze-dried foods, MREs, long-term food storage like rice, coffee beans, and so forth. And the second type of bag that you can seal is called a retort pouch. And this is strictly used for retort canning, where you can seal foods like tuna that you might see at your local grocery store, those metallic bags, where they brought it up to a certain temperature, killed off bacteria, sealed it off, and now it's super shelf stable. Let's go over retort capability now. Which unit is retort capable? Are they both capable? Sort of. It's kind of weird. So on the JVR Vac110, you are able to seal up to 7mm Mylar and retort pouches using the standard seal bar assembly. Whereas if you use the retort bar assembly, it has a concave heat strip that's specifically designed to heat up quicker and seal off these type of pouches and bags. On the VacMaster themselves do not recommend sealing retort pouches, and they do not recommend sealing 7mm Mylar on these units. So technically we don't advise using our standard seal bar assembly either, so that's something to bear in mind, but we do have the retort bar assembly. The one thing that they do suggest that you can seal on this unit is up to 5mm Mylar. Now, I have spoken to customers directly, and VacMaster confirmed this, that some customers are able to seal up to 7mm Mylar. And that might have to do with input and output voltages in the place that this is being stored. The difference is that can have some impact on how that heat strip is functioning. Now, as far as the JVR Vac110, that retort bar assembly is definitely suggested for a specific reason, because the standard seal bar assembly's times on the 7mm Mylar and retort pouches are pretty close to that 3-second threshold. So you don't have a lot of buffer wiggle room, and it will deplete the lifespan of that heat strip much quicker than a retort bar heat strip. So pick this one up. It can do it at a much more rapid pace. In some instances, it can save you up to 0.6 seconds per bag or pouch. So that's a major impact, especially when you're doing large processing. Okay, so let's quickly go over the times for standard seal bar assembly, retort bar assembly, and standard seal bar assembly on the VP215 as well. So first, before we get into that, quick commercial break, make sure you go check out Pleasant Grove Farm. They sell these retort pouches as well as up to 7 mil Mylar bags, and you can find them at topmylar.com. That's topmylar.com. These guys produce extremely quality product, and that's what we test all of our retort bar assemblies with prior to shipment. So check them out. It's topmylar.com. Okay, so real quick, the standard seal bar assembly on the Vac110 can seal up to 7 mil Mylar in 2.3 seconds. If you were to swap it out to a retort bar assembly, you can cut back your times to 2.0 seconds. If you're doing retort pouches, on the other hand, these gold pouches, you could seal it at 2.8 seconds with the standard seal bar assembly, which is really pushing the threshold of 3.0 seconds on this. And the standard or the retort bar assembly can seal it in 2.2 seconds. So quite a bit of a difference there. Now, when you move to the VP215, like I stated before, VacMaster does not suggest retort sealability at all, or capability. They also do not suggest sealing these 7 mil Mylar pouches or bags inside these units. Now, they do suggest that 5 mil, like I stated before, but we did test the 7 mil Mylar in here, and we were able to seal it in 2.6 seconds. Now, we just quickly did a 7 mil Mylar on the JVR Vac110 with the retort bar assembly, and we're going to visually inspect right here on this seal area for a crosshatch pattern. When that crosshatch pattern is there, we know that it's a good seal. Now we're going to do a pull test. So you're going to pull at the mouth of the pouch near the seal, and then you're going to try to pull this apart. If you're unable to pull it apart, you know that's most likely a passing seal in pair with that visual inspection. So that's just a couple quick tests. So now we're going to review the retort canning pouches on the JVR Vac110 using the retort bar assembly. Like I said, quickly visually inspect it. Crosshatch pattern looks incredible. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull this mouth of the pouch. Is it coming apart? No, this is perfect. Great seal. So now we're going to move on to the seal bar assembly that comes stock with the VP215 and quickly test the seal on this. So I'm visually inspecting it. It looks like a light impression. You can't see those dimples as much as you could on this retort bar assembly, just because it is projecting heat differently. I had this cranked up to 3 seconds on the seal time. Obviously I had this much lower. Let's go ahead and quickly test it. And as you can see, failure on this retort canning pouch. So that just speaks to the retort bar assembly's capability on the JVR Vac110. Let's move on to the next subject. Next, we're going to discuss cycle times. What does this mean? Well, how long does it take to pull out 99% of the oxygen? How long does it take to pull out 99.8% of the oxygen? And we're going to discuss certain situations. What's the difference? Is there a difference? Well, if you were to compare both these units stock with their 2 stock filler plates, they pull almost identical times on their vacuum draw, almost identical. So both units, if you're pulling 99%, it's under 30 seconds. If you're pulling 99.8%, it's around 50 seconds for both units. You might find this kind of strange, but it kind of makes sense because they're both using the exact same vacuum pump. Yeah, that's right, both the same exact vacuum pump. So keep that in mind. But before we get into the next subject matter, there's something kind of important as far as the difference in these two units, and it goes back to the chamber size. When paired with filler plates, how can that majorly impact your cycle times? So on the JVR Vac110, like we stated earlier in the video, there is a completely flat bottom chamber on this. So when you look inside this chamber, there are two filler plates that come stock, and there's still additional height before reaching being level with that seal bar assembly. With the VacMaster VP215, you get two filler plates that come stock with the unit as well. But the major difference is their chamber is tapered. So at the face of the unit, this filler plates are actually level with the seal bar assembly. What does this actually mean? Let's quickly go over that. So if you were to compare the pumps, they're both 8 cubic meters per hour, and when you pair that with chamber size, that affects your cycle time. Well, because the lids are different, they're domed differently, this one's more shallow and this one's higher, that can have big impact, as well as the chamber depth or height and how many filler plates you can fit in there. So essentially, the more shallow this is, there's less that you're stuck with removing every single time. So you have less volume of air that needs to be removed in this unit every single time when you pair it with more filler plates. This one, the VP215, there's more void here of air that's gonna have to be removed on every single cycle time. So that's something to consider. So just to get flush with the seal bar assembly, you can add up to 2 more filler plates on the Vac110, which is huge. So if you compare the two units with flush filler plates to the seal bar assembly, there is about a 10 to 14 second cycle time difference to achieve 99.8% oxygen removal. And this guy comes in as the faster unit in this situation. So you might be asking yourself, what is the point of filler plates? Just to quickly run over that, helps elevate the product, helps shorten the pouch if need be, cutting back costs on pouch usage, and it also helps seal integrity. It helps promote that. So if you're looking to achieve all of those, we definitely suggest it. So if you're dealing with low profile product like bacon, ground beef, so forth, this situation is perfect. You could even do salmon in this situation, and you can cut back your cycle times tremendously using this method. So, and those are all pretty common things that you would package on your chamber vacuum sealer. So something to keep in mind for sure. In this unit, you wouldn't really be able to get away with elevating the product anymore. There's not even bag clips on the seal bar assembly to hold your pouch, so if you kept elevating it, it could most likely affect how your seal performs on this unit. So check that out. So on all of our units, we measure when we're hitting an 8 torr and 4 torr on our atmospheric pressure gauge. Every unit that comes through this place gets rigorously inspected for these parameters. So we're hitting 8 torr right now, 22 seconds, and 4 torr at about 29 seconds. That's incredible. So you may be asking yourself, what does the torr actually mean? Well, it equates to millimeters of mercury, or we can do a quick math problem for you guys at home to tell you how much air removal is coming out of your chambers. So using the 4 filler plates on the JVR Vac110 at 8 torr, that equates to 99% of the air removed. That was in 22 seconds. That's really fast. Number 2 was the 4 torr. That's 99.5% of air removal in 29 seconds. That's extremely, extremely fast. So if you're doing beef, bacon, like I said before, salmon, anything that's low profile, this thing's gonna whip through it way faster than the 2 filler plates, 50 seconds roughly. Now let's move on to the VP215 and do some quick atmospheric pressure gauge tests on this. Okay, so after running some quick tests when we're comparing side by side, filler plates flush with seal bar assembly, this is the results. The VP215 hit 8 torr, which is 99% of the air, at 30 seconds. But then it hit 4 torr at 45 seconds, which is 99.5% of the air removed. That's what filler plates both flush with the seal bar assembly. So if you're sealing the same products against these two units, this guy would outpace it on average 10 to 14 seconds faster if you're pulling 99.5% of the air out of your pouch, which is huge. So definitely check that out. In this test, this was 14 seconds faster. So definitely a good test to see the difference between these two units and how quick they remove air. So next we're going to go over the cycle time range differences on these two units. So on the JVR Vac110, there's a 0 to 99 second vacuum cycle time range, whereas on the VacMaster it's a 6 to 99 second vacuum cycle time range. On the Vac110, the seal cycle time range is identical to the VP215, which is 0 to 3 seconds. And then finally, the cool cycle range on these two units is a little different. Our unit runs 2 to 9.9 seconds, and their unit runs 0 to 9.9 seconds. So their unit has a wider range. Now, will this matter to you? No. Chamber vacuum pouches need 3-second cool cycle time at minimum, right? And that's typically what we suggest for any thickness, 3 to 7 mil. And then it just goes up from there regarding retort or mylar. So do you need those additional 2 seconds? Probably not in any situation. So something to bear in mind. Okay, so to continue on the cycle time adjustability or range that you have on these two units, they are both adjustable by 1/10 of a second. So the intervals for adjustment are identical on these two units. So that's something else to bear in mind. Now, to quickly go over the seal only cycle. Seal only cycle is essentially, hey, I want to seal this pouch without removing any oxygen. Well, let's quickly go over the differences on performing this. On the VP215, VacMaster recommends that you do it externally on the unit only. We did a quick test in-house, just run it at the bare minimum for 6 seconds. Close the lid. You don't necessarily have to keep the product elevated, but I would suggest doing that. So on both of these units, you also have a 1/10 of a second interval adjustability on your vacuum seal and cool times for both units. So in that way, these are similar to one another. So if you're performing a seal only cycle, there is a minor difference between these two units. On the VP215, VacMaster suggests that you only can externally seal a chamber vacuum pouch on this unit. Now we did test it in-house. Run a 6-second cycle, elevate your product with your hand, close the lid, let it seal for that duration of time. Set your seal and cool based on whatever you're sealing externally, then go from there. The JVR Vac110, on the other hand, is able to seal internally and externally on this unit. So if you want to do a seal only cycle, set this unit to 6 seconds. You could go maybe as low as 5 seconds as well, and then just do it externally on the unit or internally. So whatever you prefer. It's a very simple process. Set your seal and cool based on your chamber vacuum pouch. So here comes the fun topic, and that's basic self-serviceability on both of these units. This is something that I'm pretty excited to showcase what the Vac110 can do, but it's also pretty cool to see what VacMaster had done with her VP215. So let's dive into that. So one thing that's really incredible about these two machines that a lot of units out on the market do not have is a body hinging mechanism. Some units in the market, you have to remove the back panel, you gotta reach way inside and do work that way. It's kind of a pain in the neck. but these two units have a body hinging mechanism, and I want to quickly cover the differences of access points and all that stuff on these two units. So on the JVR Vac110, there is 2 screws on the base. We already removed them. Okay, and then next you're going to lock that lid down and grab from the back of the transparent acrylic lid. Right here there's a locking mechanism. Just press that in and you are all set to go. So on the JVR Vac110, there's 2 things you're going to work on a lot, and same with the VP215. That's replacing your oil and your exhaust filter. So on this pump, there's a primary and a secondary oil fill. We obviously suggest using this one only. If you ever had to use a secondary, go ahead, but we really do suggest using that primary. Now, as far as the pump exhaust filter, you just rotate this head off and you're able to unscrew that filter really easily, pop the next one in, screw it back in. Super simple process, but everything's super easy to access. If you ever had damaged transformers, silencing filter, or the housing for it, the pump itself, the filter, the control panel, you can easily reach. The seal bar lift pistons, which is something you're definitely going to want to reach, in the cycle start switch. Everything is super easy to just put your hand in there and access. Now, as far as the hinging body mechanism on the VP215, it's quite a bit different. There's actually 2 access points to the inside of the chamber as opposed to the one on the Vac110. So on the top of the chamber here, just on the sides, there are 4 screws located on the sides, and once you removed all 4 screws, you can lift this up. You keep the lid open and this lifts right up, and then you can access. So the one thing with this is if you're doing an oil fill, you could do it at this point, but this is the same exact vacuum pump, believe it or not. That's something to consider as well. Same exact vacuum pump. So the secondary fill is right here. I wouldn't necessarily use their secondary fill either. I would use the primary fill towards the back. And then same thing, the head for the vacuum pump exhaust filter, you have to access it this way. So you have to reach back, snag it here, pull it out. You cannot access it from the back panel. It kind of gets stuck on the frame of the body underneath the chamber there. So yeah, that's how you're going to change your oil. Let's go ahead and remove that back panel. That's the secondary access point, and we'll show you quickly where you would fill your oil up. Okay, so now we're on to the secondary access point on the VP215. So there's 4 screws holding in the back panel to access this part of the vacuum pump inside the VP215. Here is your primary fill. You just unscrew this, fill up your oil, slap that back panel on it, and put the 4 screws back in, and you're all set for an oil change. So let's go ahead and move into replacement parts on these 2 units. Okay guys, now you know how to access the internals of your unit so that you can self-service your unit at home and replace any componentry that might be failing on your chamber vacuum sealer. Now you need to know replacement parts. Where do I get them? How do I get them? All that good stuff. So on the JVR Vac110, you're able to get majority of the parts on our website. If they are not listed on the website, you can simply just call us. We pick the phone up right away. You don't deal with any automation, human interaction right off the bat. So feel free to call us. You can order all the parts via the phone or majority of the parts on the website. As far as VacMaster servicing the VP215, they have, I believe, a couple things online like filler plates, like essential stuff, but as far as replacement parts like transformers and stuff, they don't have that listed right now. Now that might change eventually, but for now it's a verbal and order only. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next subject. So next we're going to cover the volume difference between these units measured in dB using a dB meter that's been calibrated. So let's go ahead and test it. I'm going to perform this roughly 3 to 6 inches away from the face of the unit and see what our measurement is. Now we're going to run the same test on the VP215, 3 to 6 inches from the face of the unit. Okay, so now that we've covered all of the differences, let's go ahead and cover some rough similarities between these units. The first one, let's start off, is the vacuum pump that is hosted in the heart of each unit. We already discussed this briefly, but just to quickly cover that, both those are pulling about 8 cubic meters per hour. So if you were to pull them out of the units, put them side by side, you would have a very hard time distinguishing which unit one came from. So definitely something to consider when looking at these two units. The next thing we want to consider is the acrylic lids. Both of these have transparent acrylic lids. They're identical. We treat them the same. Same with the stainless steel body construction. That is the same as well. So a couple of components that are pretty stinking similar. You might see a different shade or hue in the lid, but that's basically it. Another similarity between the VP215 and Vac110 is the control panels. They're basically identical. So power, stop, up and down, all of that is exactly the same in functionality. Okay, so we have the last two similarities regarding these two units, and first one would be the lid lift mechanism in both of these units is a spring lid lift mechanism. Identical, basically. Now, as far as the torque gauge, that's going to be our second one, the readout. The values that you're trying to hit on these two units, JVR would pass both these units with flying colors, sign them off on an inspection sheet and say they're both ready to ship out the door if this was our unit. We definitely say this thing is pulling great vacuum. It's a good unit. Nothing really bad to say about it. It does the job it needs to do. We just wanted to show a couple of the differences on these two units, but when it comes down to torque reading, these both are hitting the values that we would suggest as a passing chamber vacuum sealer, backed by our 50 years of vacuum packaging experience. Well, thank you so much for joining us on JVR Industries on YouTube. We hope that this video was crazy informative on the differences between chamber vacuum sealers and maybe even what to consider when you're shopping around for other chamber vacuum sealers. There's certain things that just go under the radar, especially when you're brand new to vacuum packaging. So it's helpful to speak to experts. You know, feel free to call us, feel free to call other companies, ask them difficult questions, ask them things that you might not know about. Maybe look into things prior to that phone call so you know what to ask. And even watching this video might be extremely helpful on what to ask more so. So thanks again for joining us. Feel free to subscribe and hit the bell below so that you can be notified on any future JVR Industries videos regarding chamber vacuum sealers, roll stock, chamber vacuum pouches, and so forth. Now, if you saw any products mentioned in this video that are our products, we are gonna post them below in the description, so feel free to check that out, from the VacOil all the way up to the Vac110. Once again, thank you for staying tuned, and we hope to hear from you guys. Feel free to leave comments and questions below. You guys have a great one.